So there's a lot to be said this morning about loving one city. At the end of this month, it will be about 10 years since I moved to Vancouver. 10 years! Yeah, woo! It's been long, but also it seems quite fast and surprising. Even though I moved from Alberta, which is one province over, and even though it's a short move, relatively speaking, there are still a lot of cultural differences or adaptations that I have to do. So to celebrate this move, and since this topic for this morning is loving your city, I thought it'd be fun to do a bit of trivia. All right, so I'll get to test how much you know Vancouver. Before we start, I just want to ask who here has been lived in Vancouver for over 10 years? All right, over 15, over 20, over 25, 30. Oh. 35, 40. Okay, I'll just stop there. Okay, so most of you might know a lot of this trivia already, and some of us are newer. Don't feel bad if you don't know these trivia. It's just kind of fun to find out. So why don't we start with the first question? And if you know the answer, just shout it out. The first name for Vancouver was Burrard, Granville, or Gastown? Okay, so if you're sure of your answer, raise your hand. So, how many say Burrard? How many say Granville? How many say Gastown? Gastown is the correct answer. All right, next question. We'll try to get through this question. Who was Vancouver named after? Anyone? George Vancouver. That's right. Woohoo! True or false? Stanley Park is bigger than New York City Central Park. True? Who says true? Who says false? The answer is true. At 1,001 acres, Stanley Park, named after Lord Frederick Stanley, is 10% larger than New York City's famous Central Park. Question. What urban creature descended from mating pairs from New York City? Is it raccoon, duck, or squirrel? Who says raccoon? Who says duck? No, this is a squirrel. So all of the gray squirrels in Vancouver are descended from 8 mating pairs who came from New York City in 1909. So the next time you see a gray squirrel, you know where they come from. All right. Next question. What sushi roll was invented in Vancouver? Dynamite, California, or Spider? Go California. You guys know that. Yeah. Well, it is widely thought the California roll was created by Japanese-born Vancouver chef Hidekazu Tojo. Yeah. There you go. So, true or false? 30% of Vancouver's residents have a first language other than English. Yeah. So the correct answer is, well, technically false, because it's actually 52% of residents have a first language other than English. Some other side notes. Vancouver has the highest proportion of Asians in its population of any North American city. Of course, Asian, that's a huge population. And in addition, 40% of its population is foreign-born. Yeah, so it's quite unique in Canada. Question number 7. Which beer company is responsible for building the Lionsgate Bridge? Yeah, Guinness. The Lionsgate Bridge was originally built by the Guinness Beer Company to connect Vancouver to a residential development. Bet you didn't know. Question 8. Which internationally known activism group started in Vancouver in the 70s? Greenpeace. It started in 1971. It's now considered the most visible environmental group in the world. 9. What's the average selling price of a single detached home? My last number was from last year, so. Anyone want to venture to guess? Average. Around ballpark. Just. It has fallen from last year, the previous. So the number I got that I found, because this could be wrong, the average selling price for a single detached home is $2.62. Yeah, $2.62. I think in 2012 the average was 1.8. Yeah. Next question, our last one. Which neighborhood once required residents to have a non-Canadian passport and excluded non-whites and Jewish people? British Properties. I didn't even know this place existed for so many years. British Properties in North Van. That's very, that's sad. Sorry. See, I still don't know the name of it. It's north of the Burrard Inlet. It's in West Van. It's a very exclusive neighborhood. But they once required residents to have a British passport. You had to be British. And if you were non-white or Jewish, you're out of luck. So Vancouver does have an interesting past. But after learning all that, is that would be, what you would tell people about Vancouver when you say to them Vancouver is awesome because of all these things? I don't think so. Trivia is trivia. It's kind of fun to learn. But we don't often think about the place that we live, which is the city. Why are cities important? And how is the church supposed to be involved? Why should the church be involved? So long before I ever felt a part of Vancouver, the one question I found myself repeating over and over again was, what am I doing here? Why Vancouver and not Mission? Why Vancouver and not Whistler? Why Vancouver and not Delta? I mean, notice that I contrast Vancouver with small towns, right? What we would consider smaller urban areas. I've never considered moving to a smaller city than Edmonton, which is my hometown. It never occurred to me to move to a smaller place or even to a rural area. That just seems like really crazy to me. And the thing is, the vast majority of us choose to make our lives in the city. 85% of Canadians live in cities. And it's kind of obvious because that's where the schools, hospitals, jobs, banks, businesses, entertainment. All these things are located typically in cities. And as much as we complain about traffic and congestion, busyness and finances, we choose to live in cities because that's where we can make a life. That's where we can make the good life. It's where we see opportunities to learn, to grow, and to teach. It's where we can exercise our skills. We choose to live in cities. So if people are living in cities, it means they are making home in the city. They are place-making. Urban living provides many opportunities, and that's why we live here. But there are many challenges and threats as well. Living in cities means we live near people who are socially, culturally, and economically different from us. Diversity is a natural outcome of the city, to any major city. So we could be living near people that are very different from us. But through networks, whether virtual or personal, we develop close proximity with people who are more similar to us. Unfortunately, this is how we have fractured communities. So in cities, you can see wealth and poverty all in the same street. For example, if you ever walk through Gastown onto downtown East Side, there's a stark contrast as soon as you cross Abbott Street. It's like there's a switch. And it's as soon as even crossing an intersection, you'll notice the disparity. I love taking people there. So if you ever want a tour in the area, it's a fascinating phenomenon. So we have diversity, but it's fractured. And urban living also provides a level of privacy that people like, because people that come from small towns often complain how like everybody is in everyone's business. You kind of know what's going on. Well, in the city you can hide. You don't have to know your neighbors. You don't have to spend all your time with your family. It's kind of nice to have that privacy. However, this privacy leads to incredible isolation and loneliness, which we have talked about before. I came across this quote reading a novel. And I think it kind of sums up this feeling of modern life. There's all these people, but nobody's speaking to each other. Everyone's just looking at their phones. And that's what this place is for. It's a place for being somewhere else. Being here means not being here. And that's modern life. That's in the book The Mark and the Void by Paul Murray. Is that what the city is for? At least the modern city, so that we can be somewhere else. As the city grows and the disparity between various groups increases, for example, one group becomes more privileged and comfortable while another becomes more desperate, that isolation deepens. I think there could be a lost sense of ownership of what happens in one city. There's a lost sense of city making for our neighbors and people from different backgrounds. There's a lost sense of working for the common good. And so it's in this context that the church is located. This is where us as an urban church live. The urban church occupies a critical location as it stands at the intersection of enormous wealth and poverty, and amongst a sea of diverse cultures and religions that now coexist in our cities. No other geographic space offers the complex challenges that are found in contemporary urban space. From Helene Slezarev-Jabar. Sorry, I probably really butchered that name. But I think that really kind of encapsulates the space that the urban church occupies. So if the city is where people are, then I would say that's where the church needs to be. That's where the church needs to be present. And if the city is where the people are, that's what makes cities important. And it's where the church needs to learn how to be a disciple and how to do discipleship making. And the city is also important to the church because in Scripture we see the church becoming the city of God. So I'm going to do a brief recap of the holy city in Revelation 21. If you ever read chapter 21 of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible, we come across an image of what's called a beautifully dressed bride coming down from heaven. That's how the city is described. That's how New Jerusalem is described at the end of time, in the last days. New Jerusalem comes down from heaven as a beautiful bride. Keep in mind, Revelation is full of symbolism. These are images, it's everything symbolic. So the writer is trying to describe what he sees. And this bride, this city, is now known as God's dwelling place. God's dwelling place is now with the people. And it's described as having no more death, no more mourning or crying or pain. And interestingly enough, what else is described as a bride in the New Testament? The church. So somehow the church becomes the city. It's hard to kind of put those two together. So the people, the church, is the city of God. The key features of this city are gates, which never shut, a light that is never dimmed, and a God who is always present. And right in the middle of the city, right now, there's a main street. Guess what's there? Any ideas? There's a major street. All cities have a major street that goes through. It's not a car. It's not a Tesla. But it's a river of the stream of life. And this river feeds trees on either side that's constantly producing fruit. And this water, this fruit, is the means of life for everyone. So this image, if you ever read through it carefully, it's an image of flourishing, of abundance, of health. And here we get to see God's plan for humanity and the world, where the city is its citizens. And it will be the most incredible city we'll ever see. And the reality is that as Christians, we are already the citizens of this heavenly city. But we have to wait for it. In Philippians 3:20, Paul says, our citizenship is in heaven, and from it we await a Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. So all this to say is that humanity is going somewhere. We are a part of something. And actually, the very best of what it means to be human is to be a citizen of this heavenly kingdom, of this heavenly city. And theologically speaking, as we look at cities, all our human attempts at building cities is an expression that innate desire for heavenly citizenship. And as ancient Jerusalem was just a foretaste of the new Jerusalem, our cities today, I believe, mimic or imitate what's to come. It's an expression of what people actually long for. Theologian Graham Ward says, "Show me your city, and I will show you what it is you long for." Show me your city, and I will show you what it is you long for. City makers are, in fact, city lovers. They want to create a place that stands for something. Well-intentioned city lovers want to show that here is the place where humans can flourish and do great things for themselves. But focusing on name-making can draw attention away from the realities of urban life. We're just focusing on making the city great and beautiful and wonderful. We can forget what the city is for and who it is for. And this is where the church can step in. So how to love your city? The Apostle Paul in Acts 17, just a brief background to it, he's being chased out of Thessalonica and Berea for preaching the gospel. And so he's waiting. He goes to Athens and waits for his companions. While waiting, however, Paul becomes distressed. He's really disturbed by all the idols he sees in the city. But so this disturbance makes him talk. He can't help but talk about Jesus to show, who is the real God. So he talks to everyone. He talks to Jews and the Greeks in the synagogue, people in the marketplace, and to philosophers. His talking intrigues the philosophers enough that they bring him to the Areopagus, which is a place, a meeting place, and it's literally a hill, a rock, dedicated to the god Mars. So it's also known as Mars Hill. And so what Lisa had read earlier is the recorded speech that Paul makes at Mars Hill. And it's the longest missionary appeal of Paul. And to this day, people examine this speech as an example of contextual theology. That is, how to understand the gospel, how to explain the gospel within a particular context, meaning a particular time, a particular place, and a particular culture. But Paul was accused of introducing new gods to the Athenians. And so with a carefully crafted speech, he speaks of the one creator God. The one God who is responsible for the whole of life. This is a God who is unlike any other God they know or worship. This is a God who is not bounded by any material or anything that's human-made. This is a God who creates boundaries for humanity and who has created life itself. And is a God who continues to sustain life. And this is a God who is near. This is a God who's close and who can be found for anyone who seeks. And Paul does something really interesting here. He actually uses their own philosophical teachings to argue for God. So this is where we find the famous line, "For in him we live and move and have our being." This isn't written by a gospel writer. This is actually from a Greek philosopher. Also, he quotes, "We are his offspring." This phrase is actually used of Zeus as an argument for philosophers. They're saying, like, we are offspring of Zeus, and Paul actually takes it and reimagines that phrase in the context of the gospel. So if we are God's offspring, then how can we worship idols? How can we create and worship human-made idols made of gold, silver, or stone? So what's Paul doing here? He's using popular Greek ways of thinking to explain Jewish ideas. And he's using a way of speaking to capture their attention. And if you notice, at the beginning, he actually starts off with flattery, with a compliment. He didn't start off with placards or condemnation. But he starts up with, wow, you folks are really religious. He didn't start with, you have a lot of idols in your city and you need to get rid of them. He just says, like, wow, you're really religious. You have lots of devotional objects and places of devotion. And you're so devoted that you don't even, that you even set up an altar to an unknown God. This is how devoted they are to their gods. Because they want to appease all the gods and keep them happy. In the NIV, Paul then calls them ignorant, which to our ears sounds very insulting. Right? I don't think any of us would want to tell our friends and neighbors, you're ignorant. But he's actually using the same word for unknown. So he's telling them, they're demonstrating that they don't even know who they're trying to worship or trying to appease. So he's going to tell them. So once he has their attention, Paul goes on to explain who this Creator God is, His mercy, and how God has now made Himself known through the resurrection. Now there's a lot to unpack in Paul's theology, but I instead want to look at Paul's practice. What did he do prior to making this speech? What did he do in order to know how to even talk to the Athenians? And the clues are right there in Paul's speech. See, walk, and look carefully. Paul did what any visitor to a city would do. He observed things. He saw what was peculiar or disturbing to him. Right? He noticed a lot of idols. He saw this. When I get visitors coming to Vancouver, there's a number of things they instantly notice that's unusual for other places, which are mountains. Sometimes, depending on what city you're from, the traffic. If they come visit my neighborhood, they'll notice the poverty. And they also notice the number of sushi restaurants. I'm sure people, I think we have someone who's very newly arrived in Vancouver. I'm sure you've noticed some things. So you take notice of things that are, for you, that's out of place or unfamiliar. So Paul saw things. And then he walked around. And really, I don't know when you travel to a different city, I find that the only way you really get to know a city is to walk in it. When I travel, I make a point to do a walking tour. And I like to just wander around on the streets, and take in the architecture, the sounds, the smells, and the taste. I mean, if you really think about it, walking automatically slows you down. It slows you down enough for you to take notice. And as city dwellers and car owners, we have a problem. Cars are very convenient, but the problem with cars is that you're in a rush. You have somewhere to get to. You have someone to pick up. You have someone to drop off. You don't have time to notice what's going on in the streets because you're focused on the traffic, hopefully. If I didn't bother to take the time to walk through my neighborhood, which is Chinatown, I would not notice the sound of Chinese opera and the sound of clicking mahjong tiles drifting through the streets. If I didn't walk through Strathcona, I wouldn't have noticed the difference in building heights created by the re-leveling of roads back in the early 1900s. It's a really strange height difference there. And if I didn't walk to False Creek from my neighborhood, I wouldn't have noticed the vibrant skateboard park under the viaducts. And I wouldn't have caught Ryan Reynolds being filmed for Deadpool. There's great benefits to walking, not to mention the health benefits. But really, like walking in the city is the best way, one of the best ways for you to know your city. And finally, Paul said he looked carefully. So he didn't just observe things, but he then took the time to look carefully, meaning he examined what he saw. He took a second look. He took a longer look. And that's how he discovered this strange altar to an unknown God, which then became the key for him to help explain who God is. So we need to take the time to look carefully at what the city is telling us about ourselves and about the life that we ought to have. What do skyscrapers and 8-lane highways and empty plazas say to us in the city? What do gardens, playgrounds, and bike lanes say? Do we agree with what the city says? So see, walk, look carefully. What motivated Paul wasn't hatred for the Athenians, nor was it motivated by desire for popularity or profit. Paul was deeply concerned for the well-being of the great city of Athens. He was concerned for the people. These people longed to appease the gods for the good of the city. They just didn't know that they were actually harming themselves for not worshiping the true God. So Paul took the time to figure out a way to communicate the gospel. So he found a way to love the people in the city. So what might this mean for today's Christian living in a modern city? What might this mean for us to live missionally in a major urban center? If the church can remember that we are citizens of a heavenly city to come, then we need to recognize that we are being shaped and discipled in the context of the city in which we live. So we need to be involved in our own discipleship. We need to be involved in city making. Not just for our own sake, but for the sake of all who live with us in the city. If we are idle about the way the city designs things, like how streets are designed, or how the city zones certain areas for various developments, then we're not paying attention to the well-being of those who walk those streets and who live, work, or play in those areas. So the church actually needs to be city makers. We need to be city lovers. And so this is a call, actually, for us to be involved in civic events and organizations as Christians. The church needs to be involved in all areas of city making, whether it's design, policy making, infrastructure, taxes, education, whatever it is. Get involved and know that you're part of making the city. And bring your Christian mind with you and your heart. We need Christians who live and are active in contributing to the good of the city. And we need to encourage one another and encourage those Christians to think as Christians in that involvement. And when we do this, two things get to happen. First, we get to celebrate. We get to celebrate what the city does that points to that heavenly kingdom. Hey, that's great that there's this public space where people can gather and meet and greet, drink and be merry. It's great that we're concerned about creation care and the health of people. Let's celebrate those things. But secondly, we would have to be prophetic about what we see. Urban life is really complex. We know this. Because of diversity, there's conflict, and there's a host of things that really encourage the self, I find, over and against the well-being of others. There's a lot that happens in our city that promotes certain values that are contrary to the city of God. Things like greed, overconsumption, hoarding, abuse, corruption. The list goes on. And so as we're city making and city building, we have to ask ourselves, are these things, where are these things pointing to? Is it pointing to God, or is it pointing away from Him? And as Christians, we know that we are not God. And everything that we do will eventually pass away. It's not going to last forever. But we know that God is present. He's still present in these spaces. And He pays particular attention to places of suffering and neglect. And I think that in itself is an invitation for us to also pay attention to places of suffering and neglect. So this is how you are to love your city. Be involved as a Christian and be prophetic. Meaning, speak truth. Pay attention, speak truth in love. And the missional practices are quite simple, which is see, walk, and look carefully. And so, as a practice, this is what I really want to get to, because I want you guys to practice what we are learning, is to think about your neighborhood. I want to just invite you right now just to imagine the neighborhood that you live in. And I know you might not be in Vancouver proper. There's a few living in Richmond and further out east. Wherever you are, wherever you live, imagine your neighborhood. And in your mind, imagine yourself walking through your neighborhood. So now you get to physically walk to the map back there. And I want you, don't worry about the Vancouver Parks map. I just put it up because I got it from downstairs. But if you could put a dot approximately where you live on the Vancouver map, and there's a Richmond map. Apologies to Coquitlam. It got really far away. Well, you can put a dot somewhere out east. So if you can take a dot, pass the sheet on, and then go and mark where you live approximately on the map. Here, I can pass on. Yeah. Try getting the dots. Well, each person can do it. Practice the walking. Yeah, the little one. Use the little dots. Yeah. Again, think about where you live, not where you work, but where you live. Oh, thank you. Anyone else needs a dot? Okay. I love this map. So once you put your dot up, can you just go back to your seats? I just put up this map because I thought it showed up on the street a couple of years ago, and I just thought it was really funny. Unfortunately, I would like to do this exercise again when there's less people away, because I think we'll have a better representation of our city. What I want you to do now, this practice is not over, is that I want you to gather with the people that live approximately close to you. So we might need maybe 4 groups, or three or 4 groups. So I would say here, so if the Richmond folk can get together in one group, and then probably the west side, did I use that right? People. So folks that are, maybe in Kit, UBC in this area in one group. And then East Van on the east side. So I guess there's 3 groups, east side and beyond, let's just say. So kind of mirroring all this. So can I have, west side, east side, and then maybe Richmond over here. We'll try to do this kind of same kind of. Yeah.